Picture the greatest empire in human history, a kingdom so massive, so terrifyingly powerful, that enemy nations surrendered just from hearing the marching of their boots. Now, imagine that this entire invincible superpower didn't fall because of an invading army, a plague, or a peasant uprising. It was completely erased from the map by a single guy with a piece of parchment. We always hear these epic stories about kings being poisoned at grand banquets, or assassinated in dark alleys by jealous brothers trying to steal the crown. But that's amateur hour. If you really want to destroy a monarch, you don't stab him. You give him absolutely everything he's ever wanted. What if I told you the most devastating betrayal in the history of the world wasn't an assassination? It was a promotion. In the next few minutes, we're going to dive into a true psychological masterpiece, a scheme so deeply embedded, so incredibly patient, that the victim actually demanded his own destruction, completely convinced it was his greatest victory. Grab a seat, because you are about to learn how to tear down an empire without ever lifting a sword. Let's set the stage. The man on the throne was Emperor Valerius. Valerius wasn't just ambitious, he was a walking ego trip. He fully believed he was a living god, destined to rule every inch of dirt on the planet. But he had a problem. His generals were old school. They liked slow, methodical warfare. Valerius didn't want to wait 50 years to conquer the continent. He wanted it done yesterday. Enter a scholar named Cassian. Cassian wasn't a soldier. He was a master of the human mind. Plucked from total obscurity in a tiny, recently conquered border province, Cassian had an absolute genius for psychological warfare. Valerius saw his potential immediately and promoted him to Grand Strategist. Cassian became the emperor's shadow, the guy whispering the real plays while the generals argued over maps. Cassian's strategy was terrifyingly simple. Don't fight the enemy's army, fight their mind. When a massive northern rebellion flared up, the generals wanted a 2-year siege. Cassian said no. He ordered the imperial troops to light 5 campfires for every single soldier and dragged massive iron chains behind their horses to kick up dust storms that literally blocked out the sun. The rebel scouts reported back that an army of demons was marching on them. The rebellion surrendered unconditionally the next morning. Not a single drop of blood was spilled. Valerius was absolutely mesmerized. For the next 15 years, the dynamic was flawless. The emperor pointed at a territory and Cassian broke it psychologically. Cassian utilized a doctrine of ruthless, overwhelming aggression, pushing the armies faster and further than military logistics should have realistically allowed. When a heavily fortified coastal city refused to yield, Cassian didn't just order an attack. He ordered the public crucifixion of its 2,000 defenders along the beach. It was horrifying. But here's the dark psychology behind it. Cassian knew that if he made an example out of one city, the next 10 cities down the coast would throw their gates open in sheer terror. And they did. It was brutal, mechanical efficiency. The emperor grew completely intoxicated by his own mythos. With Cassian delivering victory after victory, Valerius demanded that the empire expand in all directions at once, across the blazing southern deserts, into the frozen northern mountains, and over the eastern seas. His veteran generals were terrified. They literally dropped to their knees in the throne room, pleading with Valerius to stop. They warned him that the supply lines were stretching to the breaking point. The treasury was hemorrhaging gold just to pay foreign mercenaries to hold the borders. And worse, the millions of diverse people they had violently conquered were starting to communicate in the shadows. But Cassian stood right beside the throne and whispered exactly what Valerius wanted to hear. Cassian assured him that momentum was their only true defense. To stop expanding, Cassian argued, is to invite doubt, and a living god cannot afford doubt. Feeding directly into his narcissism, Valerius authorized the grandest military campaign ever conceived. He emptied the capital. He sent the entire Imperial Legion, his personal guards, everyone, to the absolute edges of the known world to secure the final borders. And that, right there, was the exact moment the Empire died. The plot twist of the century wasn't a poisoned cup of wine. It was a calculated mathematical implosion. Within 3 months, the Imperial supply lines completely shattered. It was geographically impossible to feed the troops. The legions in the desert starved to death. The mercenaries in the mountains, realizing the gold had run out, turned rogue and started looting. But the true masterpiece of this scheme happened back home. The cruelty that Cassian had orchestrated for 15 years, the crucifixions, the terror, the psychological torture, had created an ocean of boiling hatred across the continent. With the Emperor's army trapped thousands of miles away, starving and mutinying, Cassian walked into the royal aviary. He didn't send orders to retreat. Instead, he tied 300 tiny scrolls to messenger ravens. What was on the scrolls? The architectural blueprints of the Imperial Palace, the shift schedules of the remaining skeleton crew guards, and the locations of the hidden weapon caches. He sent them directly to the leaders of the rebellions he had supposedly pacified. When the revolutionary forces easily breached the throne room, Emperor Valerius, trembling and terrified, turned to his trusted advisor. He demanded to know how their grand, invincible strategy had failed. Cassian didn't draw a sword. He just stood there, looking at the man who thought he was a god. Cassian wasn't a loyal servant corrupted by the taste of power, and he certainly wasn't an aristocrat looking to steal the crown for himself. Cassian was the last surviving son of the very first village Valerius had burned to the ground 20 years prior. Cassian never wanted to assassinate the emperor. A quick death would just make Valerius a martyr, and his son would inherit a perfectly stable kingdom. Cassian wanted to erase the entire bloodline from the history books. He used the emperor's own massive ego against him, accelerating the expansion of the state until it became a fragile, hollow shell. He conquered the world for Valerius, solely to guarantee that the world would tear Valerius to pieces. A kingdom destroyed by an enemy might one day rise again, but an empire crushed by the weight of its own greed, that is buried forever. If you loved this deep dive into the dark psychology of history's greatest schemes, hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a comment below telling me which historical figure you think got what they deserved, and I'll see you in the next video.